So we are going to spend the next, it's about 30 minutes or so, talking about the process to get you from an accepted offer. Once you get the accepted offer, what do you need to do to get you to closing? And we're going to talk about it from the lens of if you were working with buyers. And the reason why we talk about buyers first is that typically newer agents have more buyer clients at the beginning of their career than sellers. But the good news is a lot of the work that you would do, regardless of if you were representing a buyer or a seller, a lot of it kind of overlaps. But today we're just going to focus on buyers. And specifically, what we're going to do is go over an overview of the steps that we recommend you take to get you from accepted offer to closing day. But then we'll also talk a little bit too about some of the resources that you have at KW to help you with that. And then just one caveat that I always like to say, this isn't a tech training or a deep dive into zip forms or DocuSign or Command. These topics will come up today, but we do have separate trainings that are currently live and on our YouTube channel on those topics that you could dig into. So what we are going to cover is a checklist that we've created called the accepted offer checklist. And then again, I'll give you some suggestions as to how to summarize and organize your dates and deadlines, as well as communications during this process. So there's a lot of people that can be potentially involved once you get an accepted offer. And then once you get that accepted offer, many people start entering the transaction that you might not have had interaction with prior. So of course, there's going to be buyers, your buyer clients. There's going to be the listing agent, the lender, if your buyer's getting a loan. There's title companies. Sometimes there's a different title company for the buyer than there is for the seller. There's a variety of home inspectors, testers, all those types of folks. Some agents use transaction coordinators. An appraiser might get involved. If the property is a leased property and there's a renter, tenants are involved. And then sometimes too, you have family members of your clients that get to be very vocal during the process. But what this is all trying to convey is there's potentially a lot of people that are involved in this, but you as the agent are kind of the quarterback, and it's your responsibility to help determine who needs to know what and when. So in terms of the technology and the resources that are most helpful during this time, of course, you've got zip forms, right? That's what we use to draft documents. There's Command. Once you do have contracts that are in motion, you will have to upload those into Command to have our compliance team review them to make sure that everything looks in tip-top shape. But then Google, whether it's your email, the calendar, the drive to save files, you've got the Google Suite at your disposal. And then we also have these checklists. So that's going to be really what we're going to focus on today. And then there's this last website, timeanddate.com, that you'll see how I use that once we get into figuring out more specifics around our timelines and timeframes. So the first thing is, like, you have an accepted offer. So what do you do next? And what I would strongly encourage you to do, even after today's class, is to go on to KW Realty MKE and pull up our listing and buyer checklist. So I'm going to keep sharing my screen, but can you see the KW Realty MKE website now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So once you've logged into the Agent Hub, scroll down to New Associate Resources. And here we have our listing and buyer checklists. If I just hit view, do you see the checklist?
Yes, I do.
My gosh, technology is working with us today. Okay, so these are the checklists that we've created. If you have a new listing, this is overall the general steps that you should take when you have a new listing. Then, once you get an accepted offer on that listing, these are the general steps that you should take to get from accepted offer to closing. But the third page here is the accepted offer when you have a buyer client. And again, general steps that you should take to get to closing. But this is going to be the document that we're going to really focus on today and get into the various sections. So that's how you can locate it. You can download it. You can print it. You can do whatever it is that you're going to do to help keep you organized. So really those first 24 hours, once you get the accepted offer, those first 24 hours are key to setting yourself and your clients up for success. There's usually a lot of communication that happens during this time. Organization of documents and timeframes and deadlines is also really important during this time. But as I mentioned, like this is really your opportunity just to spend a few minutes before things get in motion for you to sit down, organize, determine who needs what and when. And what I've done here is just extract the first section of that checklist document. And this is kind of what happens then in those first 24 hours. So if you already haven't added your buyer, their contact information into Command, you need to do that. But then you also will be starting a new buyer opportunity within Command. And again, I'm not going to go into details on how you do this. But why this is important is once you've created that new buyer opportunity in Command, you're going to be starting to upload documents into Command based on the various phases or the duration of the transaction. You'll be uploading documents into Command for compliance review. So what are those types of documents? The buyer agency agreement. We have KW disclosure forms. That's in the consultation phase. And I'll open up Command in a second. Actually, I'll just do it right now. So when I talk about phases and opportunities, so I'm going to go to the opportunities tab, which is this little handshake icon. And I am going to look at, let's do buyers. So I've already created this buyer opportunity, and this is what I'll show you as it pertains to phases. You'll see over here on the left-hand side, Command has already staged out the documents that are pertinent to the various steps in the transaction. So the first phase is the consultation phase. And over here, these are the documents that are relevant to that consultation phase, the buyer agency agreement, affiliated business, and disclosure. Anything that says required, you have to upload that document into Command for compliance review. Then the next phase is the under contract phase. And if I click on under contract, here are all the documents, those that are highlighted in red, those are the required documents that must be submitted to compliance for review. So if I go back to our slideshow here, this is what I've just showed you, right? The consultation section, buyer agency, and some disclosures, and then the under contract folder. This is where you put all of the documents that were approved and accepted as part of your offer. So there might be a counter offer. There, of course, is the offer to purchase, the GMAR Addendum A, the condition report. There may or may not be an Addendum S that your buyer might have signed. It depends on how old the house was. If you are under contract on a condominium, there's a couple extra documents that need to be uploaded into Command. But then this is also the phase where you're going to be uploading the earnest money receipt as it's provided. You can upload the home inspection report. And this is also where throughout the transaction, if you're delivering notices or if you are executing amendments, which would be signed by both parties, that's where you upload everything into Command. So I like to think of Command 2 as your digital filing cabinet. One thing that I do, because you can go back, we hold on to the documents for up to 2 years. So you can always go back and pull those documents up if you need them. But I also save them to my Google Drive as well. just so I have the PDFs from even beyond 2 years ago. So this is kind of what happens in those first 24 hours. You're really on a mission to gather all your documents together and get them into command. Any initial questions? I see we
Nope,
have
I'm gonna look at this checklist after class here.
yeah, and I will email it to both of you. So you have it, but I'll also include the link where you can access it via the agent hub as well. Okay, I'm just writing down my next steps. Okay, so here we go. Moving on. Also in this first 24 hours, you have to be updating information within the within command about your transaction time frame. It's important that you try to keep command updated with your closing date because the compliance team will review your documents that you've submitted for approval. They review those based on when your closing date is. So we get this comment a lot where I've submitted my documents into command, but I haven't received any feedback or approval yet. My first question usually is, well, when is your closing date? And if it's not for another 3 or 4 weeks, that's why. The compliance team prioritizes their document review based on closing dates. So if we've got closing dates coming up, within the next week, those are the ones that they're really going to prioritize. But it's important that if your closing date shall change during the transaction, if it moves up, if it moves back, it's important that you try to remember to update that information in command as well, because it'll help the market center and the compliance team know when to review. Also, in the first 24 hours, you should send a fully executed offer packet back to your buyers so they have the fully, both parties have signed the documents, so they have it for their records. And if your buyer is working with a lender, you also should be sending the final offer documents that are signed by both parties to the lender as well. And you can just send that via email. And this is also, adding contract dates and deadlines to your calendar. This is really when I start to sit down and I literally have in front of me the offer. I look at the number of days that I listed for various contingencies, and I convert those days to actual dates. And I'll show you how I do that in a second. But once you've spent some time and you've double, triple checked what you think the deadlines are based on the offer dates, you should always email the listing agent and indicate, these are the dates that I'm working with. I want to make sure that you confirm and you are in agreement that these are in fact the dates that you're going to work towards as well. Because one, it's nice to make sure that both sides are working from the same deadlines or working towards the same deadlines. But two, there are times in an offer where maybe a listing agent has missed the fact that you wrote into your offer that any deadline, that falls on a weekend or a state or a federal holiday gets pushed to the next business day. Sometimes that gets lost in the sauce. So it's always just good to confirm your dates with the listing agent. And then you also will be sending those dates and deadlines to your buyer so they know when their deadlines are. And then I also send those to the lender as well, just so everybody is crystal clear with what we are talking about as it pertains to timeframes. And then the last thing that I do after I get the offer accepted and I'm putting everything into command, there's a tab in command where you have to enter in what your commission amount is going to be. And again, we're not going to go into detail on command today, but we actually do have cheat sheets on the agent hub on our website that show you step by step how to add that into command. And we also have training videos on that as well. So again, just to recap that first 24 hours, what you're really focusing is on organization. You're organizing your documents, you're organizing your dates and deadlines, and you're initiating the communications about those things with the pertinent people in your transaction. Now, I mentioned, in terms of the resources that you're going to use during Every transaction, of course, is going to be like zip forms and DocuSigns, but what I have found over time is leveraging email templates for those emails that I frequently send. So once you get a few transactions under your belt, and maybe you're not working with a transaction coordinator, or even if you are, you're going to start to realize, oh, like I send the same emails for every transaction. So leverage your time. Don't reinvent the wheel for every transaction, and create email templates within Gmail to help you streamline some of those communications. So examples of things that I have templates for is I send to my buyers, here's the summary for your offer to purchase, and then I attach the documents. I also send an email out that's entitled accepted offer. Now what? Important next steps. And then within that email, it has all of the dates and deadlines, key dates and deadlines. Another one that I send out for every transaction is it's closing week. What's happening and what do you need? So over time, you'll start to realize that, again, you'll be sending the same types of emails for every transaction. So leverage Gmail templates to your advantage. Do you guys know how to use templates, or have you ever used email templates in Gmail? No,
No, I haven't.
you haven't? Okay, here, I'll show you real quick. I go into my mail. And I'm gonna pretend that I am gonna email a new one. Let's pretend you're creating an email template.
That looks pretty good.
I know, this is an amazing email. Say I'm sending this at the beginning of every transaction. So I've just created my template. I'm gonna click on these three buttons. I click on templates and I hit save draft. And then it'll save it. So here you guys can see that I have some other ones that are already created. So when I'm ready to send my email, I just click on the three dots, hit templates. And here, we'll do this, offer to purchase. So here's my email. Anything in red, I make sure that I am very cognizant that I update it based on who the buyer is. But then I'm going to be filling in all these things too. Make sense? Use them. You create your own stuff and just keep on leveraging resources. Okay, now what happens? Oh, some extra tips. I'm just reiterating what I've already talked about. Dates and deadlines should be confirmed with the listing agent because we want to make sure everybody is following the same timeline and time frame and we're all on the same page. Another thing that I like to make sure that I communicate to my buyers within this first 24 hours is I give them a heads up that there's going to be a lot coming at them. I'm going to be sending them their to-dos or their next steps. The lender is going to be sending them instructions and information. So it's only natural that they might feel a little bit overwhelmed in those first 24 to 48 hours after getting the offer accepted. I always tell my clients, if something doesn't make sense, or if you have a question, or you want to go through the information together, set aside time and go through it live on the phone. It helps everybody. And I would rather have people prep and feel good about it at the beginning versus feel stressed and uncertain as things go and move along. I also, in these first 24 hours, if my buyer is offering earnest money, this is where we have to give them instructions on how to deliver that. And I also remind them that when they either provide the check or if they are using electronic trust funds through MLS, whatever format they're using to pay, that money will be deposited immediately into a trust account. So the money must be in their account immediately. So if they have to move things around, maybe from this account to that account, maybe from a savings account to a checking account, they need to do that immediately because the money will hit the account as soon as it's sent in. And then I put here days 2 to 25-ish because every transaction can be very different with regards to the contingencies that are included. Maybe some have a home inspection, maybe some don't. Maybe some have a bump clause with a home sale contingency, maybe some don't. But at the end of the day, kind of the steps that you need to take are very much the same. And the steps that you have to take are always uploading whatever documents that you are executing, get those into command. But if you are getting a home inspection, or if you're getting any other type of inspection or a test, make sure that you get those scheduled and that your buyers get those scheduled as soon as possible because time is of the essence and you'd rather get those things done sooner versus later. Once any type of inspection or test is scheduled, make sure you communicate that with the listing agent who can then notify the seller to ensure that the home will be available for the buyers and that inspector to get in to see. Once, if you do get a home inspection, send the results or send the information over to the listing agent. That is in the offer. It indicates that the buyer has to provide the home inspection report to the seller. But one person you don't send the home inspection report to is the lender. So the only person that gets it is the buyer and the seller. Also, if you are working with a buyer that is getting a loan, this is usually the time frame too, where the lender will start to order an appraisal. You want to make sure that you get verification that that has been done, that has been ordered. You also want to be checking in during this time with the lender to ensure that they're on track to meet that deadline as it pertains to satisfying the loan commitment. A lot of lenders already are very proactive in keeping everybody updated at the same time. But if you haven't heard from the lender in a little bit or in a few, like a week or so, or if your deadline is coming up, by all means, reach out and just ask what the status is. You'd rather know sooner versus later if there is perhaps a holdup. And sometimes too, the buyers can be a holdup for a lender. So you might need to help the lender out by checking in with the buyer as well to see what questions or what things might be holding them up to not deliver on whatever it is that the lender needs. If your buyers again are getting a loan, this is usually the time frame too where you are, once they have that loan commitment letter, you are sending it over to the listing agent, ideally before that deadline. And if there's been any repair work that has been done at the home by the seller, or even the buyer, but usually the seller will be the ones doing the work. Get copies of lien waivers, get copies of the invoices to ensure that they've been paid, and get any copies of permits that might have been pulled as a result of getting the work done. Make sure you send all of that information over to the lender as well as to the title company so they have it as well. Tips during this process, reiterating, don't send that home inspection report to the lender. They don't need it. They might ask for it and you can say, nope, you don't need it. If you are negotiating repairs or you have changes in dates and deadlines, make sure that you upload any of those finalized documents into command, especially if they change, a price or if somebody's getting a credit, or again, if it's changing closing. It's best practice just to get into that habit of ensuring that as soon as something is fully executed, save it and get it uploaded into command for review. If you are getting a home inspection, I had mentioned earlier, once you get those things scheduled, it's important that you notify the listing agent so they can inform the seller. You can actually set up a home inspection as you would a showing using aligned showings or showing time, whichever one the listing agent prefers. And then also during this time, the title company is going to be emailing you a title commitment. And that's something too that you want to make sure you take a look at. You want to make sure your buyers take a look at. If there's any questions that the buyers might have about the title commitment, I always direct them to give the title company a call directly and not me, because the title company is going to know all of that and then some. And I would just call the title company and ask. And then 1 week or so prior to closing, make sure that you go back into Command to verify that all of your documents have been approved. It's important that your documents are approved before closing. Clearly, you want to make sure everything is accurate. But why it's also important that everything is approved in Command before closing is that even if it closes, you will not get your commission until everything has been officially approved and verified in Command. So just make sure you stay on top of that. And lastly, too, again, a reminder, if any of the closing, if the closing date changes, make sure that you are notifying folks accordingly. And then you also schedule your final walkthrough during this time too. Similar to home inspections, you can actually set up the walkthrough via aligned showings or showing time. One thing that I always make sure that my buyers are aware of is when I schedule the walkthrough, I do ask the listing agent where the seller is in the process of moving out. Sometimes it happens when sellers wait until the very end to pack up and to move out. And so when you go in for your final walkthrough, it might be in a little bit of a state of chaos because the sellers are actively moving out. So I always like to find out where the sellers are at in the process, and then I make sure I communicate that to my buyers so we don't have any surprises. But this is also too the time when I'm going to set up any type of smart plan to ensure that I'm staying in communication with my buyers well after closing. And then on closing day, you should turn in your closing statement. If you go to closing in person, as you should, you will get a closing statement and a commission check. You will take both of those documents and you will take them to one of our 5 Keller Williams offices and you deposit it or you hand it over to the front desk. If you are not doing that, if you're not turning it into the North Shore office and you're turning it in at either Southwest, Wauwatosa, Lake Country, or Prestige, that's fine. Everything gets processed here in Whitefish Bay. So those offices will actually courier. We have a courier come 2 times a day to pick up checks and bring them here to the North Shore office. So if you drop it off at the North Shore office, commissions can probably be processed within 1 to 2 days. If you drop it off at any of the other offices, we just add on a business day because of the courier. But again, you only get paid unless you turn in that closing statement, you turn in that commission check, and all of your documents have been approved in Command. And then lastly, a little tip after closing day. Go back into MLS and make sure that the listing agent closed out the listing correctly. So they've got your information in there. They've got the correct price. Sometimes we see mistakes, so it's always good just to make sure that everything's entered in correctly. And again, make sure you stay in contact with your buyers. Charlie said a stat a few months ago in a team meeting. It was some obscene amount or a high percentage, like 80 or 90% of buyers never hear or clients never hear from their agents again. So don't be that person. That's all I got. Any questions?
No questions from me.
No? Okay.
Um, yeah, no, I think
Nothing yet. But again, if once you get that first accepted offer and you are going through this process, this is where you can rely on your PC coach. You can call the helpline. You can ask a lot of people for help and just to double check things, because that's what we're here for. We want to make sure that you feel supported and that you've got the help that you need when you need it. So you're certainly not alone. So don't think that. But
Okay.
if you do ever have questions, by all means, put it into Pumble, call the helpline. Somebody will be able to help you lickety split.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. See you soon.
See you soon.
All right, bye-bye.